We've covered several topics already. There's one topic that I feel compelled I still have to address, and that is the COVID 19 vaccination. One way or the other, I wish to a certain degree I wouldn't have to address it, but it still keeps coming up. And therefore, as a minister of the Word of God, I would like to give you some insight from God's Word in regards to whether we should or should not take the vaccination. Now, previously, if you have not had an opportunity to hear our other message in regards to COVID 19, in regards to the COVID 19 vaccine, we had a medical expert from the area of Houston, Texas, Diana Schmida, NP, and she's a Christian medical expert, and she gave us a lot of good insight from the medical standpoint. I really encourage you to take a look at that video or hear that message and be enlightened in regards to that point of view. However, there is some moral questions that as a minister I am able to help you with if you're still deciding whether you should take the vaccine or not. One of them comes to the issue of abortion. Now, I want to let you know, I took the COVID-19 vaccine already. It is something that I did not act upon too quickly, but at the same time, I was one of the very first ones that took the vaccine, probably very early in the month of January of the year 2021. It was a very tumultuous year. We were going through a transition on the presidential administration in the United States of America. A lot of things were not very clear as to what was going to happen. Some people were hoping that the pandemic was going to end, but it isn't going away. It's still not going away. And therefore, it is important that we address the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID-19 outbreak worldwide. It is no secret, it has not gone away. It's still something that is here globally. And I shared that very carefully. Because it is still here, I'm going to address the thing is many Christians are considering not taking the vaccine, and some Christians are saying you should take the vaccine. It is, even to a certain degree, harshly said, stupid not to. I don't want to stand in that point of view. I believe that we are hurting more the cause and we're hurting the body of Christ when we start name calling. I don't want to do that. Nor am I trying to pressure you into doing something that goes against your conscience. I believe we need to be fully informed. I believe that there's different reasons why conspiracy theories do rise. They rise not because we like to believe in fables. They rise because things in the past have happened where people have let other people down when we had full faith in what they were supposed to do, and yet they were not coming through, or they were pulling a fast one on everybody. They were being a fraud. And because of that, I want to be able to address that. When it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, some people are saying, Christians in particular, that they do not want to take it because they are created with tissue of aborted fetuses. And therefore, as Christians or anyone that is pro-life, they feel that it is wrong to take the vaccine if they are pro-life because it has a piece of an aborted baby in it to save their own life, but yet at the expense of the death of a baby, an innocent baby. Now, unfortunately, in the time that we are in Christianity, and I pray that it changes, but in the time that we are in our Christian life, or in the time frame of Christian history that we're in right now, there's two types of responses within the Christian community. One is a very liberal response that says it's okay to allow testing. It's okay to even allow abortions. And it's okay that my money gets taxed to pay for abortions, not just in my country, but worldwide. That is wrong. The Bible clearly states that God hates, yes, God, this is God saying it, not me saying it for him. But God hates the shedding of innocent blood. And therefore, as Christians, we should not be supporting something or some politician that is promoting the death of innocent children in the womb. But I myself, as a Christian, as a minister, took the vaccine. So am I a hypocrite? Am I having a double standard just to save myself at the expense of someone else? One of my favorite bands, Striper, the lead singer, announced this week that he took the COVID-19 vaccine. A lot of people unfriended him on social media, and they said, I will never hear your music again because you took the mark of the beast. By the way, that message is coming as well. So please be on the lookout. Please don't miss it. You don't want to miss it, so you need to click on the subscribe button and the notification bell. Now, quickly, back to the message. Is a COVID-19, does it have the mark of the beast? We'll get that in another message. But today, does a COVID-19 vaccine have tissue of an aborted fetus, of a baby? And why would a minister like myself take it if that's what it is? Well, I want to tell you, and I want to discuss that. I want to clarify, and before I do that, I do want to mention and tell you again, this is not to convince you either or, but this is to dispel some of the misinformation that is out there. And it is important that you really contact your doctor if you have more questions, because this is not medical advice. This is to make a moral clarification. Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 12 from the Holman Christian Standard Bible says the following: their fruit will be used for food and their leaves for medicine. It is foolish to go the other way around from it's okay, I have a liberal standpoint and I'm a Christian, but I am okay with abortion. It's wrong to go the other way and be so ultra conservative that we say that anything that comes from the government, a secular government, is not of God. Any kind of medicine that is to be offered to us is not from God. The Bible clearly states in Ezekiel chapter 47, as I read it to you right now, or quoted it to you, that God gives us the science and the wisdom to learn how to draw medicinal benefits from food, from leaves, from nature. So therefore, God gives mankind the knowledge of medicine, and we are to make use of it and not be so quick to disavow it. Yes, there is some healthy skepticism. There is some healthy questioning, and we shouldn't just embrace everything right away. But we should also be very careful to not just question everything, but with the intention of just being ultra skeptical and never accepting any kind of advice. Now, I do want to quote the following. Dr. Craig Delsey, he is from the Titus Regional Medical Center, mentions and clearly said that the Pfizer vaccine was not made from any aborted material at all. Any aborted material at all. So therefore, we need to understand that, example, the Pfizer vaccine has no aborted material at all. So if you've taken the Pfizer vaccine, you're clear. If you're a Christian and you feel that you should take it, then take the Pfizer vaccine. It does not have any aborted tissue at all. Dr. James Lawler, medical doctor from Nebraska Medicine, he also says that the Moderna vaccine does not contain it either. However, this is important to state. I, as a pastor, did take the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. But they do want you to understand, particularly Dr. James Lawler, MD, from Nebraska Medicine Corporation. What he says is the following. He says that although there's no aborted tissue in the vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna did run safety tests for these vaccines using fetal cell lines. Now you might say, now you're playing with words. Does it have it or it doesn't have it? It doesn't have it. But in order to carry it through, in order to produce it, they did use fetal cell lines that already are in the laboratories. Now, here's a good question. Where did these specific fetal cell lines come from? Are you ready? Here we go. In 1973, there was an elective abortion that took place in the Netherlands. That's not here in our country. It was in 1973 in the Netherlands. There, in a laboratory, a lot of research began to be used from this aborted baby from the Netherlands. That's not something I'm glorifying. This is Counsel and Remedy with Pastor Samuel Salazar, and I've always promised to give you the real deal of how things are. So this is it. They used cell lines to test the vaccines from this baby from back in 1973. Up to today, they still have them. And what they do is they continue to use them over and over and over again. And since 1973 and on, they continue to do research with these fetal cell lines. And the reason that they do it is that they develop more cell lines from this cell line of this original baby in 1973. I think that's horrible. I don't think that's right, but they've done that. I didn't choose for that to happen, but they've done that. From these babies in particular, there was 2 abortions that happened at that time in the Netherlands in 1973, and that's how they keep on using these cell lines. Now, for over 5 decades, they keep using them over and over again. Now, again, I'm not for it. I don't think that should have been something that happened, but it happened. Before the coronavirus pandemic that came from China and they began to spread, President Trump, who was the president of the United States at that time, he moved in regards to make sure that any kind of testing was not going to be involving babies that were being aborted. As a matter of fact, he started moving what was called the biological, ethical, and moral concern for many Christians and non-Christians alike. Because you need to understand that there's other people from other religions that have a strong opposition to the killing of innocent babies in the womb. It's not just Christians. It's also our Jewish friends. It's also some people within the Muslim community and others as well. So President Trump pushed that there would be a biological, ethical, and moral concern that was attended to in regards to the use of fetal tissue. And because of his administration, like him, hate him, love him, despise him, this is what he did. He promised and he ran his campaign to uphold the efficacy and the moral issues of not supporting abortion or the testing of using fetal tissue, okay, especially by government scientists. It stopped. And he placed restrictions on academic research. And some people are saying, this man hates science. When you started hearing some of these criticisms, he hates science, he's against science, please understand where he was coming from. It is possible to find research findings without using and promoting the death of innocent babies. And it surprises me that people were saying he's against science, but these are the very same people, by the way, and I need you to please pay attention. Don't be moved emotionally by what people are saying, because these are the very same people that will boycott, that will avoid certain products if they were tested on an animal. And they say there's other alternatives. You do not need to test on animals. But yet, they will hate on a president because he said you cannot test on fetal tissue. Can you fathom that? Can you let that sink into your head? Again, as a minister, I'm imploring you to open your mind to the issue of abortion and the COVID-19. Now, again, it might be going through your head. Then why, Pastor, did you take that vaccine? Because it has no aborted tissue in it. The safety precautions were tested with fetal cell lines from 1973, but none of that was used with fetal tissue itself, or gathering more fetuses and their tissues and their blood or their stem cells to be able to do the research. Now, when he placed this academic restriction on government findings, the National Institute of Health, as a matter of fact, for studies on fetal tissue, they stopped. While the COVID-19 vaccine does not have fetal tissue on the vaccine, okay, please understand that other vaccines have been used in decades before using the same fetal lines that the COVID-19 vaccine was tested on. So if you are not taking the COVID-19 vaccine because it was used, the safety measures were used using those fetal cell lines, you need to understand that if you've taken the flu vaccine, it was also put through the same testing that the COVID-19 was used with those fetal cell lines from 1973. If you take the measles vaccine, meningitis, pneumonia, tuberculosis, tetanus, any of those vaccines that you've taken already, you would have to reject not taking them anymore, because now, or if you say, I don't want to be part of that, but you have been for decades, because those vaccines were also developed using the same testing that the COVID-19 vaccine was used with. Now, this is where we have to have what's called the bioethics. And there is a lot dealing with bioethics when it comes to, I'm not talking about in the issue of morality. I'm not talking about the issue of even within the church. I'm talking about within the medical research community. So, what is the Christian ethical decision when it comes to much of these concerns over vaccines and research being done with just 2 cell lines from 2 specific abortions? Some say if suicide is wrong, but a Christian who needs an organ donation gets an organ from a person who committed suicide, then there's nothing wrong with that. So if a person commits suicide, should we not use their organs because they committed a sin? They killed themselves. Or if a child was kidnapped and murdered, should we not use their organs? Now that's another topic in itself, organ donation. But should we not use them because a horrific action happened and therefore someone's benefiting from a horrific action? I think, again, that is what we call Christian bioethics. That we have to look at, or medical ethics, that we have to make that our own conscious decision, not being forced, not being judged, not being felt guilty because of those decisions, but it is between us and God, based on the word, based on what he's leading us, because not every circumstance, not even every single organ donation comes with the same thing. Now, you can deny the organ donation and, you can just pray upon divine healing and wait for God to heal you in that way. Or you can take the opportunity to take that organ donation and have a life saved. So some take medical bioethical response and they say that they take the evil of someone else and use it for good. And some say that there's a research, for example, it reminds us of research that Nazi Germany did. And they did a lot of discoveries because they were doing a lot of research, evil research, when they were in the middle of the Holocaust. And they would use the Jews and the Jewish people to make experiments. As a matter of fact, we've made a lot of discoveries because of what they did, because of their cruelty to the Jewish people. And we got a lot of information in regards to how to treat and prevent hyperthermia, for example. And there's some things that, for instance, particle wood that is used a lot for construction or for projects. Particle wood, do you know that particle wood was created by the Nazi Party? But yet we don't reject it. We've kept it. Even though they're evil, we've kept particle wood. Synthetic rubber. For those of you that like rubber for this or rubber, rubber products, they come in very handy. They're very sturdy. They're waterproof, etc. You know that a lot of the synthetic rubber was discovered and used and expanded by Nazi Germany. One of the most famous ones too, Fanta, a famous drink, especially in Latin America, and now starting to be popularized in North America, as I believe it's been bought by, Coca-Cola. And now they drink Fanta, but you know that Fanta is an original drink from Nazi Germany. But we do not question it at all. We've kept it. Some people that want to be purists and say, no way, I want nothing to do with it, will reject it. But yet we still have remnants of something evil that happened in our history, and we've used it. But this is different. And some people take notice of past events in history and they say, and they try to make moral decisions, and that's understandable. But they say that people put their 100% trust in doctors, and yet their doctors took advantage of them and used them for unethical experiments, such as what happened in not necessarily in Nazi Germany. In Nazi Germany, they were forced to it, but in other places, like even here in our own country, in the United States, people trusted their medical professionals and they were taken advantage of. So when someone says, no, there is no fetal or aborted tissue in the vaccine, some people are like, I don't know if I should believe that. Aborted cell lines, to me, is still the same thing. But they're telling you there's no aborted tissue in the vaccine. Where does this skepticism and doubt come from? Let me give you a little bit of bad history in regards to the trust between medical professionals and the laity, the public. From 1932 to 1972, there was a very racist project where hundreds of black men were being monitored by the Tuskegee University. The Tuskegee University. And without their consent, they were infected with syphilis, and they weren't even treated. They were just being tracked to see how the disease would manifest and how it would affect them. Now, can you imagine the spread of that among their families and their communities? From the 1930s to the 1950s, for example, some medical doctors advised their patients to smoke cigarettes. Now, these were causing cancer-causing cigarettes, but they were saying, hey, it's okay. Please make sure to smoke. And as a matter of fact, you would see some doctors in some marketing or posters, and they were there with their white coat smoking a cigarette. U.S. doctors in the 1940s, for example, intentionally went to Guatemala and infected many with sexually transmitted infections to study the disease. Now, again, that is a bioethical issue where it led a lot of people to say, I can't always trust people who say they're out to just find information and then tell me what to do with my body. That does not mean that we should abstain from medical professionals, though. You know, I'm a minister. I'm not perfect. I have seen many ministers and I have seen their real side. Unfortunately, there are things that I would not want to say. But you know what? It's the same thing among lawyers. It's definitely the same thing among politicians. It's the same thing. I've been working in the education field too. And you know what? There's some horrible, immoral things that have happened even among teachers. How many stories have we heard about teachers being inappropriate with their students? Principals being inappropriate with their staff? Jailers being inappropriate with their prisoners or unjust with their prisoners? Fathers being inappropriate with their children? Husbands being inappropriate with their wives? Does that mean that we get rid of fathers, mothers, teachers, lawyers, doctors, preachers, No. The sad reality is that there's evil. And when evil is not guarded by a moral standard, science will become, like we've heard that terminology from the comic books, mad science. Mad science where there is not the Christian ethic and the Christian morality or the Judeo-Christian morality to guide it and keep it from harming those it's supposed to cure. Again, I am not saying to not trust your medical professional. I encourage you to, but I also encourage you to look into what you're hearing. Get a second opinion. Hear a consensus. The church, as a matter of fact, for thousands of years, has honored medical professions, has honored doctors. As a matter of fact, in the month of April, about the middle of April, the church has traditionally honored doctors, and it asks the Christian church to pray for their physicians. Did you know that? Yeah. Today we're always having a new day of something. There's a day of the taco, the day of the hamburger, the day of the flag. We have Mother's Day, we have Father's Day, we have the day of this, the day of that, the day of the radio, the day of green, the day of what. There's days for everything now. Or a day to remember those who suffer from this disease, or there's days for everything. But the church, for thousands of years, particularly besides the minister, has called the laity, the church, to honor their medical doctor or their physician. As a matter of fact, they pick 3 women in particular. And these 3 women existed among the same time as the apostles. And it's interesting because Luke also existed during that time. He wrote the book of Acts and the Gospel of Luke as we know it. But the church, how interesting, has elevated the importance of women, the intelligence that God gives women, and the ability to also to provide a service beyond just motherhood or being a wife. Zenaida and Philonella, specifically, they were sisters and they were cousins of the Apostle Paul. They were also known as physicians in the church, and they didn't charge for their services, but they were also used in the gift of healing. Hermione, she was the daughter of Philip, the deacon, and he appears, by the way, in the book of Acts. She was also a doctor, and when you see her in some of the old paintings from the Eastern Orthodox Church, for example, or the Coptic Church, they have some early renditions of how they looked, and you see her and she always has a little spoon, like she's gonna give you some medicine. Okay, and it reminds me of me when I had my little kids, and I would always give them honey or give them some kind of I would call it Papa Surprise or a concoction to help them remain healthy. They didn't like it, but it reminds me because I see her and she's there with a spoon. If you look up the picture. But they ministered in the healing gifts of the Holy Spirit, but they were also gifted with the wisdom to cure with medicine. Again, like Ezekiel says, God gives us the wisdom to heal with medicine. God used them as physicians during their time. Though they were women, God used them in this manner, and the church blessed them, and the church honored their position as physicians. And for thousands of years, it's asking the church to honor and make time to honor and pray for their physician, that God guides them and keeps them and gives them more knowledge to help the people. Now, it's interesting that we honor their position and their calling and lives as well. Even if you disagree with them, you still honor them by getting a second opinion, because we learn from one another. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of a rabbi that wrote the book of Ecclesiasticus way back during the times of the Old Testament. This book does not appear in the traditional Bible, but he existed during the times of, between the prophets and the New Testament. And he wrote a book, and it's known as Ecclesiasticus from Sirach. And he says the following about doctors for the Christian church: honor physicians for their services, for the Lord created them for their gift of healing. That's right. We honor them for their gift of healing. For their gift of healing comes from the Most High, and they are rewarded by the King. The skill of physicians makes them distinguished, and in the presence of the great, they are admired. The Lord created medicines out of the earth, and the sensible will not despise them. Was not water made sweet with a tree in order that its power might be known? And he gave skill to human beings. Notice that little parentheses. Human beings. That doesn't mean just man or just women. Human beings. And the parentheses. That he might be glorified in his marvelous work. By them, the physician heals and takes away pain. The pharmacist makes a mixture from them. God's works will never be finished. Isn't that powerful? And it goes on to say, and from him health spreads over all the earth. My child, when you are ill, do not delay, but pray to the Lord, and he will heal you. Give up your faults and direct your hands right at him, and cleanse your heart from all sin. Offer a sweet smelling sacrifice and a memorial portion of choice flour, and pour oil on your offering as much as you can afford. Then give the physician his place, for the Lord created him. Do not let him leave you, for you need him. There may come a time when recovery lies in the hands of physicians, for they too pray to the Lord that he will grant them success in diagnosis and in healing for the sake of preserving life. He who sins against his maker will be defiant towards the physician. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been guilty of that too, right? And let me tell you this. There's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. That doesn't mean that you dishonor your physician. That doesn't mean that you don't believe in medicine at all. I'm going to say about approximately 20 years ago, I suffered a lot from allergies. I would take a lot of medicine. I was on a nebulizer. I was on a pump. I was on oral medication. I was on capsules. I was on several types of medication, and I would start noticing that at night, particularly, my heart felt real jumpy. It would tremble a lot, and that scared me a lot. One time, I went ahead and took the advice of another doctor. And at that time, I live out in the desert, so it hardly rains. We, of all times and of all places, suffered a flood. And it was raining excessively, and my allergies got worse. And none of the medicine was working. And I had to try different medicine because some medicine would work and then it'd stop working. And then I would take a certain medication and then it would stop working again. Until I got tired and I spoke with the physician. I said, what is going on? And this is what the physician told me. Because in our city, we went through a flood and we're a desert. There's a lot of seeds out there that were never sprouted because there's no water. Now, because there's a flood, there's a lot of different weeds and flowers that are coming out, and the pollen is aggravating your allergies and making you even worse. So what do? You get more medicine. Or we try another medication. Until one time I heard a different doctor, and the doctor was in the radio, and he was saying, one of the best ways you can do is vaccinate yourself against allergies. One of the things you can do is get honey from your local area. Now, again, this is not to treat any ailments, okay? This is just my own personal story. This is not for you to take and stop taking your medicine. Talk to your doctor. Let them know. So I heard this other doctor, and he was saying, if you buy honey from your local area and get bee pollen from your local area or a beehive from your local area, and you start consuming that, you're vaccinating yourself against those allergens in that area where you're at. I started doing that. Long story short, I have not been on medication for 20 some years now. My allergies, once in a while, I do get the sniffles. That's only normal, especially if it gets real dusty. But besides that, I have not had medication in over 2 decades. Now, what's interesting is that the other physician told me, you will probably start developing this very chronically and it'll get worse. Well, this other doctor said it could get worse, but you could also alleviate it by vaccinating yourself. I'm not trying to trick you here, okay? But I want you to think about that term, vaccination. The art of vaccination is for your body to get ready to learn how to fight against something that aggravates it or that wants to destroy it. Hence, the science, the medical science, as the book from Sirach of Ecclesiasticus tells us and encourages us, honor your physician. Pray to God and pray for your physician and give your physician their place, for God called them and gave them that wisdom. I took the wisdom of these two physicians and I put it together. I didn't stop taking my medicine, but I also started hearing the advice of a second opinion of another doctor. And guess what? It worked. Diseases have been prevented by vaccines. That's just the honest truth. We have polio, which is highly infectious. We had one of our presidents that was a victim of polio, and he was in a wheelchair because of it. It causes paralysis and sometimes even death. Tetanus, which causes a lot of muscle pain and stiffness and lockjaw and potentially death. Hepatitis A and B are also preventable diseases now because of vaccines. Rubella, which can cause brain damage to a baby in the womb, can now be prevented because of a vaccine. Measles, which come with high fever, cough, runny nose, red watery eyes, whooping cough, which can lead to the death of children, can be prevented with a vaccine. The pneumococcal disease, which can lead to deadly infection of meningitis. Rotavirus, as a matter of fact, which causes a lot of abdominal pain, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, mainly in infants and children, can be prevented with a single shot. Chickenpox, which used to be very common, now hardly anyone has chickenpox anymore, and it is preventable with a vaccine. Now, when you get older, because a lot of people stop taking the vaccines because they assume the vaccines are for little kids, they get older and they start breaking out in hives and all this stuff. And you know what it is? It's the chickenpox virus. What am I coming down to? Matthew chapter 22 verse 39 says, love your neighbor as yourself. I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just telling you, love your neighbor as yourself. You may not want to take the vaccine, and that's understandable. Inform yourself. There's reasons why you don't want to take it. But do not let the reason be because you've heard that the vaccine has tissue from an aborted baby. It was tested with those cell lines, but even those cell lines are not aborted tissue. Now again, be fully informed. If even that factor is for you to say, I'm not going to take that vaccine, it's demonic, it should not have been used with that type of testing, then I respect your opinion. But also be willing to reject all other vaccines, all other type of medication that has also been done with testing with those cell lines. Because you cannot just be selective to feel yourself smug and religious and say, I'm doing the right thing, but yet in ignorance, you're doing something else that's just as bad if you're really using the same judgment call. And the reason I'm sharing that is because I want you to live. I've seen people that are 10 years younger than I am. Some people are a couple of years younger than I am. Some people are my age. And they've succumbed to death because of COVID-19. And some of them have passed away within 2 to 3 weeks of the infection, when it could have been prevented Now, recently, we had a new release of a new vaccine, Johnson & Johnson. It was pulled because we have approximately 6 people that suffered a stroke. But yet, compare that to the overall 1,000 people that are dying a day because of COVID-19. The logic doesn't make sense. I was hearing some other medical doctors today, and they were discussing that. And politics aside, they were saying, the previous president would have said, just go with it. And of course, they covered their track and they're saying, but thank God he's not around so no one can hear him. But in this case, he would have gotten it right. And they're saying, where is this guy? Why doesn't he do something? Why did he allow them to stop it? Because now everyone is going to have this paranoia that they should not take the vaccine because they're going to get a stroke. But yet it was only 6 people that got that stroke. Well, 6 people is 6 people. I don't want to be one of those 6 people. But then now you're risking being one of the thousands of people who are dying because this is a disease that is a new outbreak. It's a new disease. And let me tell you this. There's always going to be another outbreak within 50 to 80 years or 100 years. We have had them before. They come and they go. You're right. They come and they go. But this one is something that got us totally by surprise, and it takes your breath away and you die. And it causes other complications. So I ask of you, love your neighbor as yourself. Take precautions. I know it was hard for me to do them too. Take precautions. Consider very seriously for the love of your family, for the destiny that God has called you to live out here in this world, to consider to take the vaccine. This is Pastor Samuel with Counsel and Remedy. We pray that you take this advice and that you use it to supernaturally walk on water. There's so much more that God wants to do in your life. Be wise. Love yourself. Love your family. And love your neighbor. And carefully consider everything regarding the COVID-19 vaccine, whether you should take it or not. Take it up with the Lord. But as Rabbi Sirach said, give your physician its due place of honor. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.